Hello, everybody. I'm here today with Marc Kidd, the CEO of Captivate. Marc, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You look like you're somewhere sunny. I guess you're in Dallas, not New York.
I am in Dallas. It's supposed to be a nice, beautiful day today, and so it's good. It's a little different than what I experience when I'm in New York.
Now, we're here to talk about New York. So January the 24th, you're speaking at the Solomon Partners Media and Entertainment Summit. This is the first time that Mark Boydman and his team have put this event on. They've got a great speaker lineup, and you are one of those great speakers, CEOs of some really, really impressive companies. What are you thinking of talking about next week?
I think in general, we'll talk about Captivate's recovery during the pandemic and kind of what happened. I mean, you couldn't have created a more perfect business to be crushed in a pandemic where people didn't want to be in office buildings and certainly didn't want to be in elevators. So we'll talk about that. I agree with you. He's got a great list of CEOs, a number of friends of mine. So it should be impressive. It should be a good overview of what's happening in the space. And I look forward to it. I've never been to this type of an event before, and I know this is the first time they've done it. So it should be fun, and I'm looking forward to both being a presenter, but more importantly, to listening and spending time with people in the breakouts.
It's certainly going to be a big learning exercise. You've spoken before at our own investor conference, which we're hoping to do in New York later in the year in October. But I'm looking at the list now. I mean, not only have you got Mood Media, you've got Media Resources, you've got Chris Regal from Stratacash. Bit of enigma these days, of course. He's very quiet, but built a very successful business. The new general manager of advertising at Uber, Uniguest. You've been doing huge amounts of M&A in this space. Vector Media, Mark, who's spoken before at our event. So, can you give our viewers an insight to what you might cover?
Well, I want to talk about what's going on in the digital out-of-home space. I think it's really exciting. And I think there's a big opportunity over the next 3 to 5 years of real growth and also potentially consolidation in the space. There's a lot of money looking for quality impressions on the ad side of the house. And with cable television's erosion in terms of number of households, number of audiences, the streaming happening in terms of viewership and number of minutes spent with streaming services, I don't think will be offset with the advertising moving from cable to the streaming world. So I think that both agencies and big brands have got to look for ways to reach out and reach quality impressions. And I'm pretty bullish about the quality of the impressions that digital out of home brings, whether it's a network like ours or gas station TV or Zoom. There's a whole bunch. And then there's been a real explosion in the retail side of the space. And I think as FSIs have gone away, people are really looking for ways to impact people at the point of sale. Right. So I think there's a lot to talk about. I think there's a lot of good things happening in the space. And I think programmatic will enable an enormous amount of this growth, in the next 5 years. We've seen a lot of growth in programmatic just during the pandemic.
Yes. You mentioned 3 of my favorite networks there, Zoom, yourself, and gas station TV. But you also alluded to the retail media networks. I know that Mark Boydman himself is very bullish on the retail media network side. Do you think that we need more of a currency to get these sort of new networks up and running and bringing in the right revenue, or are we okay with the old way of measuring things?
I think you have to have a currency that is acceptable and is understandable for people that are buying video, television dollars and video, programmatic internet dollars. You've got to have a common currency across all of it. Prior to coming to work for Captivate, I worked in the television business for a number of years. And prior to that, I was in the college sports business. And we aligned with Nielsen because that was the accepted currency that was used. And then once we did that, we had to go in and talk with the holding companies, explain to them the nuances of our various, venues and our programming. I think that same thing is true for out of home. Each venue is different. Each audience is a little bit different in how you interact with them. But we have all the common elements that a television network has. We have video. We're delivering our content today to our screens the same exact way that people receive content on iPads and iPhones. And so we need a common currency that fits with that. It's interesting because the television industry is struggling with this as well. They are looking at different ways to address the digitization of their product and how they want to do it. So we've aligned currently with Comscore. We thought that was a digital currency. That was something we did in concert with Lightbox and with gas station TV and members of the DPAA. And that's worked well for us, but we're continuing to look at new ways and where to go. And so a common currency across the space is important.
Yeah, we like Comscore. I think they're doing a good job. They probably need to do a bit more other than just you three. It's funny you mentioned AdSpace because I know it's Lightbox now, but I could never talk about Lightbox. But AdSpace was their brand.
I
Like
think
years
about
and
that
years
all the
ago.
time. I knew the former CEOs. I knew all those people. So every time I think about it, I always pause for a
Yeah,
second
I
and then
think
have to
Peter
remind
AdSpace.
myself.
Peter AdSpace.
Yeah,
I forget. I forget that it's Lightbox. Now you must have been at Captivate for 10 years now, maybe.
I'm in my 10th year. I started my 10th year in October. I can't believe it, Adrian. That's a long time for this space. And I was a newbie when I came into it. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't really know what I was walking into.
And
And it's been interesting.
when you started, it was Gannett who were behind it. They're still involved because I think you've had a couple of new institutional investors or private equity backers, I think.
We had a Generation Partners is the private equity firm that recruited me into the business.
Okay.
There was a gentleman by the name of Mark Shapiro, who was someone that I had worked with when he was at ESPN at the time. He was a consultant really to Ari Emanuel because they were looking at buying IMG, and I had worked in the college sports space. So Mark and I were talking, and he said he had made an investment in this company with Generation, and he thought it was something I could should look at with Jim Wilburn, who I'd been working with at Wintercom in the television production business. And honestly, my first reaction was, who cares about screens in elevators?
Yeah.
Who's going to pay attention to it? And then when I really started to look at it at his behest, what I found is this was a network, like many of us in this space, who had quality impressions with very difficult, hard to reach people. Mm-hmm. And in our case, we're in a business environment where people had high-speed internet. They could go in and shop and buy and do things in the office. And so we really, I've been really excited about it. And I'm very bullish on where the space is going to go.
Yeah. I mean, that's
so
funny.
10 years is a long time.
I always laugh. I remember in the early days of the internet, when high-speed internet wasn't around everywhere, it was in offices that people were doing their internet shopping at lunchtime or just after lunch. All the e-commerce sites were saying that people were doing most of their buying around about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
And that hasn't changed. I mean, we have an investor through Generation that I talked with, and he was talking about how that between 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock, the number of working women that actually leave the office and go and make purchases in various retail outlets, and particularly to get food for the evening, mm-hmm. is staggering. So right. There's a big opportunity to tap into that and to really utilize that, I think, in the retail media side of the business.
Absolutely. So how big are you guys these days then? Because when you started off, you were mainly New York and Boston, I think, but is that right? But you still grown. I think you're in Canada as well now. How big are real estate?
Right. So today we've got about 12,000 buildings across North America in the office side of the house. And so we have relationships with really most of the large real estate portfolio holding companies, the Oxfords, the Blackstone, those types of companies. And so during the pandemic, when we were effectively shut down by governments to not have people come into offices, we decided to pivot. So we made a decision to go into residential. And today we have about 500 buildings in our residential network. We're seeing a great deal of growth in that regard. And then we started working because we moved all of our distribution to the cloud during the pandemic. And so we started delivering everything through the AWS cloud. And as part of that, we created a content as a service business. One of the things we've been trying to do is we've been trying to not have to have so much capital involved in deploying to be able to put screens in elevators. It's expensive to do so. And so we found with the residential network content as a service, we can bring a content feed with 6 programmatic platforms and all the things that Captivate does, and we can tailor it to the particular venue. And so we've seen some success in that. Right now, we've got about 20,000 screens that we feed in Europe. We've got the residential network, and then we've got the office network. So it's early days, but I feel pretty good about this expanding.
Good. Well, you've grown it very nicely, that's for sure. Well, I'm sure you're going to enjoy all the other speakers, and I know that the other speakers will get lots from you, and you'll get lots from them. So good luck with the presentation. I think I'm right in saying that a lot of the presentations will be recorded, so I'm sure that Solomon Partners will be releasing them if you're allowed to. I know that when we speak at our investor conference, lots of people want to speak under privacy. You've got a closed room, you're going to have about 100, 120 people there. You want to talk shop. You probably don't want it all to be aired, I suspect. as you'll be
Well, they're
sharing.
going to stream it. I mean, I know they're going to stream it.
Oh, they are
That's
going to
what I've
stream the
been
whole
told.
thing?
Yeah, I've heard they're going to
Oh,
stream
wow.
it and release it. So I have to assume that any and everybody will have a chance to look
Ooh.
at it. So it'll be good. It'll be good for the industry. And I think it'll bring some attention to the space because there's some really exciting things going on. I mean, you were talking about the gentleman that heads up Uber advertising. When he was at Seismic, he was really helpful to me in the early days because I remember talking to him and spending some time with him about programmatic, how to think about it. And that shaped a lot of the things that I learned from those discussions. So there's no doubt you'll learn a lot from being in the room with these people. They're dynamic. They've got interesting businesses. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And it's good to be with you today.
Good. Well, thanks for that, Mark. I'll just stress to our viewers as well, it's not just about out of home. It's a media and entertainment summit. So there are lots of other businesses there. But it's certainly a pretty impressive, I think it's 12, 15 different speakers. So it should be really good. So we'll find out from Mark Boydman how it can be watched on stream if you can't get into the room. But good luck, and we'll hope to see you later in the year.
Thank you.